My name is Maggie Austin. I'm the Deputy Executive Commissioner at the New York City Department of Design and Construction, and I'm delighted to provide introductory remarks for the opening session of A. The first session, which kicks off today's program, is The New Forces of Change, an Industry Leaders Conversation. It includes a stellar panel of highly regarded and powerful women who will begin the conversation on women and power. Power, that incredible word. Power is tangible. It can come with a position, or it can come through influence and reputation. It may be earned, it may be awarded, but it's an essential concept that each of us use as we navigate different relationships within our organization and outside of it. So let's lean into this conversation with our incredible panel of highly regarded and powerful women who will share their insights on creating a working definition of power that we can easily apply to a variety of situations. So it's my pleasure to introduce Palmina Whalen, President and founder of Palmina Whalen Strategic Solutions, who will moderate this session that includes Alexandria Parati, the Executive Director of Corporate Initiatives and Strategic Planning at Holt Construction, Denise Berger, the Director of Strategy and Innovation at AECOM, Kim Hardy, Senior Vice President for Diversity, Inclusion, and Compliance with McKissick & McKissick, and Jane Chick, Vice President and General Counsel at Sonalta Construction. Let's start the conversation.
Good morning, everyone, and my name is Palmina Whalen. I am president and founder of Palmina Whalen Strategic Solutions. And today we're going to be joined by 4 professional women in power who have the advocacy to define and influence power within the organization. I'm going to ask each one of these professional women to introduce themselves, and I will start with Jane.
Hello there. What a pleasure to be here. My name is Jane Chick. I'm the Vice President and General Counsel at Sonalta Construction. Sonalta Construction is a design builder and contractor working primarily in the public sector. We've been around for almost 50 years, and I am very happy to be here.
Thank you, Jane. Denise?
Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Berger. I'm Chief of Strategy and Innovation for AECOM. AECOM is a global company. I work in the East region. We have over 8,000 employees. My role encompasses all 8,000. We work with the following business lines in transportation, buildings and places, PPM, water, energy, and environment. I also, in the past, worked for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey for over 32 years. And my last role there, I was Chief of Operations for the Engineering Department. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Denise. Alex?
I'm Alexandria Parati, and I'm the Executive Director of Corporate Initiatives and Strategic Planning at Holt Construction. Holt Construction is an over 100-year-old company. We are national with a large portfolio in the Northeast. We do aviation, transportation, healthcare. We run the gamut on all different construction projects as well as delivery methods.
Thank you, Alex. Kim?
Hi, I'm Kim Hardy, Senior Vice President for Diversity, Inclusion, and Compliance at McKissick & McKissick. McKissick is the nation's oldest design and construction firm owned by a Black woman. I also serve as the MWBE Director for the new Terminal 1 at JFK, where I have the pleasure of working with my colleague, our great moderator, Palmina Whalen. So thrilled to be here today.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And thank you for the panelists for introducing themselves. As you can see from the diverse group that we have here, we're going to have a very interesting conversation about women in power. And what does that really mean? What does it mean to be women in power? And there's so many different definitions. You can look in the definitions online in the dictionary or different people and what they've said and and how they view it and how many times it gets redefined and defined. And I think simply put, women in position of power are women who hold an occupation that gives them a great amount of authority, influence, and responsibility, whether it's in business or in government, but with the end goal of ensuring that we have a positive outcome. It's not power in a form of manipulation. It's not power in a form of control for greed, but it's a power in a form of how can you help that generation that's coming into our workforce? How can you help each other succeed? How can you take that power and the position that you're in and do a greater good for the build industry as a whole? And with that, what I'd like to do is just jump into questions to discuss by each one of our panelists how they define themselves in this position of power and what can come out of their good of what they do for society. So I'm going to jump with the first question, and I'm going to reach out. Jane, you're going to be my first person. Hi, Jane.
Good morning.
Welcome and thank you for participating in this very interesting topic. And I'd like to ask, how would you define power in a professional setting? And this is a two-part question. So, and how can we apply it in different levels of our organization? So let's start with, how do you define power in a professional setting?
So for me, power in a professional setting is about your ability to direct or influence the behavior or the decision-making of others.
Yeah. So the power to influence the decision-making of others. That's very powerful, because that can truly create a trend or a direction of which way the project's going, or which way the business is going, or which way the organization's going, right? And then if we take that line of thought, how do you apply that differently to the different levels of organization? Like, how does that work to be able to provide growth within the organizations?
So this is a little bit of a challenging question to answer. So for me, a lot of my power, I would say, would come from my title. I'm Vice President, General Counsel, and I'm also responsible for compliance and for risk management. So people look to me when it comes to decision-making, when it comes to handling things that are risky. So whether or not, we let a subcontractor who doesn't have insurance on the job site. So a lot of my authority comes from my title. I'm Vice President and Risk Manager. So people are going to look to me and feel comfortable when it comes to decisions involving how much risk to take on.
Terrific. Well, thank you. And Denise, I'm gonna transfer over to you. So Jane said some really influential things, and I know that your position formerly at the Port Authority and now with AECOM. Tell me, how do you define power in a professional setting? And if you could touch a little bit on how that means, what that means in a governmental setting versus what that now means in a private setting.
Sure. So I see power as a capacity to make others act or believe in a certain way. Okay. And with power, there's different elements of power, and I'm talking about positional power. Okay. So in your positional power, it's awarded to you, to a person based on their rank or title. So you have this position, and because of it, for the most part, there's a hierarchy, and people are, for the most part, supposed to listen to you and follow the structure or hierarchy. And in the Port Authority, it's a very hierarchical organization. But then there's influence, right? So influence helps people, or anybody could have influence. How do you influence people to do things, to act differently? That comes from self-awareness, from respect, I believe. And in both, in Port Authority and in AECOM, they're very big organizations, and they're both matrix. So even though you have power in a position, doesn't mean people will follow you and lead you. So if, for example, if you want to take a hill and you want people to be around you, following you, you have to have their respect. Just because you're a leader doesn't mean you have the respect. So for me, it was important to influence, lead by example, be transparent in my decisions, because with that power, you want people to believe in you. And especially in a matrix organization where maybe the reporting is not direct, how do you influence to do things? How do you influence others to believe in your cause and help move and make change? So I hope, Pomina.
Yeah, Denise, that's terrific, because essentially what you're saying is you have the ability to create a baseline and infrastructure for those young women that are entering into the industry to be able to know that there's a platform of growth, right?
Correct.
To redefine power as far as how does it work for you? How do you define it within the spaces that you're in? And then how do you visualize it to be able to move into the next stages of your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is terrific. And with that, I'm going to jump to Alex. This is a great segue because Alex, you're working at Holt Construction. It is a general contracting CM firm, which means that you are dealing with a lot of personalities in there. And I'll say this very gently, but you are a female in a very male-dominated field. And so tell me, with a woman in power in a firm that is a male-dominated field, how did you find your way through defining power, and then how were you able to apply it to different levels of your organization?
I think it's exactly like what Jane and what Denise said already. It's not the male-female dynamic that I look at. It's really the relationships that you forge with people in your organization, right? It's when you get your team to follow you, when you're an inspirational force, when you believe in what you're doing for the organization, then people follow you and they believe in you and they want to be like you. You know, you're an inspirational force. I think that's something that you could be towards a male, towards a female. It doesn't matter your walk of life. If you believe in what you're doing, people will follow you and they'll gravitate towards you like you're a light. I think that's really how I like to manage, and that's how I like to bring teams together. I like to make everyone have a voice. You know, when I'm bringing a team together, everyone has a voice and an equal voice, just so that they feel that they are part of the whole. I think that's a great management skill, listening to others, you know, customizing how you speak to people based on what their personality is a key as well. You have to know who you're speaking with. What everyone likes to say is reading the room. You need to know, you know, who you're speaking to and customize your management skills towards that person to make sure that you're effective.
Well, that's interesting because then you're indirectly saying that power is nurtured, right? So it's not something, you know, Denise has said in certain situations you can be given power, but what you're saying is a little bit of what Denise also suggested, is that it's something that maybe is earned through the nurturing and the care that you've given it, right? And through that, it is a constant focus of monitoring to ensure that the definition of power either at least stays and maintains and respects its baseline, but then can grow holistically and intuitively into something that's even better and greater than anyone could imagine.
Yeah, and not being afraid of, you know, if someone, you know, lower than you is struggling with a task, not being afraid to jump in and be hands-on and help them with that task. You know, that really goes a long way with people, showing them that you are not so high up that you can't, you know, be a boots on the ground kind of person and help them.
That's terrific, Alex. Thank you. And that's a great segue into Kim, because Kim, for some of you who don't know, Kim and I have the pleasure of working together. She's such a great person. We work together at the JFK Terminal 1. So a little bit of a shout out for Kim right now. But Kim, you know, in this concept of defining and customizing and almost being servient, I say this very gently, but this is along the lines of what you do, and you know, the great initiative that you lead for the program on diversity and inclusion, because it is a position, you are in a position of power, you are in a position of influencing, but you also have to nurture that very carefully and define and be able to make it interchangeably depending on what the need is for the environment that you're working or the ecosystem that you're working in. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you define power?
Great. Thanks so much, Palmina. It's such a pleasure to work with you on the new Terminal 1 project at JFK. And I'm so pleased that you're the moderator for this panel, because you execute power perfectly, in my view. But, you know, I think in a role, particularly my role as Senior Vice President of Diversity, Inclusion, and Compliance for McKissick & McKissick, which is some of you may know is the nation's oldest Black-owned engineering and construction firm. And we have a pleasure of leading the diversity and community engagement initiatives for the new Terminal 1 at JFK. In that role, you know, I look at power and leadership a little bit from a different lens, and it's something you touched on, Palmina, as did Alexandria, really in terms of team building, because while one may have a title, which is important, and I'm a person that came up through really hierarchical organizations. In this role, you really have to influence people. And how can you influence people, right? By having some sort of expertise and competence in the subject matter, but also really relying on your colleagues that may have even a greater depth of knowledge, particularly when you talk about construction. Uh, but understanding the mutual goals, uh, again, going back to that concept that both Jane and Denise mentioned, influencing people, right? Helping to nurture decision making. And with our team, I think also with power, we have to execute and manage up the ranks. For those of us that are senior VPs, we have CEOs to work with and to influence. And at the same time, we also have to influence our teams. And really, regardless of what your title is in an organization, you do have power and you do have the ability to influence your organization and your circle of colleagues and your clients. And I think for those of you that are in the audience that may just be kind of launching your careers or in mid-career, I think it's important for women to recognize the power that they have to influence, to build relationships, to belong to organizations like WBC, where you can get mentorship and further kind of develop your skill level, so that you can really take advantage of using that power in a wise and productive manner for your career path.
Kim, that's great. I want to say, as you wonderful ladies are speaking, I thought about a quote that came from the former UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, that once said, "Power is like being a lady. If you have to tell people you are, you aren't," right? And which is what you've just indicated. You're saying you already own that power. It's a matter of what do you do with the power that you own, right? And how do you navigate power in relationships or within your professional situation? And I think each one of you, well, I have to say this is a very intelligent group because you're already projecting the next question that I'm going to ask. So I need to modify some of my questions. But I guess what I'm going to ask everyone now is, and it's a specific question, how do you assess how powerful you are within your professional situation? Now, I want you to think about that question because it's a powerful question, right? It's something that really makes you think about the depth of who you are within your organization and the depth of who you are within the feeling of how powerful you are within your organization, within your professional environment, within your, within any outside organizations that you may belong to besides your firm, within your network or circle of women. So Denise, you're smiling the most. So just by default of you smiling so much, I'm going to ask you, because I think you may already have an answer that you want to share with the audience.
It's probably not a good answer though.
But they're all good answers.
Well, I think it's what you just said, Palmina. There's a self-awareness that comes out, and how you cultivate that awareness, to be more constructive and in beneficial ways. And what I mean by that, I just want to walk back for a second. So I've seen people in positions who were given positions because it's just the way it is in a hierarchy manner. Didn't mean they were ready for that position. And I learned a lot from people who may not have been a good leader, a lot of what not to do, of how I didn't want to act and what I didn't want to do. So when I became, when I rose up and was able to get to the position I am now, it was a lot of it by influence and persuasion and being transparent, being a good worker and being in the right place. But you know what, I'm very hands-on. I'm a very hands-on leader. I like to talk to people. I like to understand. One of the biggest things that I think that women have to understand and how you shape the dynamics is understanding what the organization is moving forward, right? What are the hierarchy relationships and how you choose to network. And networking is really important. It's not just going out and collecting business cards, right? Especially in the organization you're in. It's understanding what the vision is and the mission of your organization and who has that, let's say, power, right? And what the workplace is driving to, and that's important. So what I'm saying is that recently I needed some information, so I reached out to staff, and like I said, I'm really hands-on. And my direct report comes to me and says, "You can't reach out to those staff members." So I was like, well, why not? They were very kind, and I got the information. Just, you send people in a tizzy when you reach out. You realize how high up you are, and you're asking people. They get nervous. They call me, and I don't realize that because I'm just very hands-on, and I like to have information at my fingertips. But I didn't realize that I was sending the whole marketing and branding group back because I was asking some, and it wasn't questions too. It was just wanted some information. So they had to remind me, you're an executive, you can't reach out to people. You have to go through the proper channels. And I was like, okay, I'm very sorry about that. But so I guess if I forget about that, I like to work with people. I like to, like I said, have hands-on experience with them, and also forge relationships, because I think it's important to have that. And I have and I don't want to go off tangent, but I'm a mentee right now. We have reverse mentoring, and I think that's really important for me to learn really about power and leadership. So, I'm told that I'm an executive, right? I guess I feel like an executive. I know how much influence I have, and it could be good and it could be bad, because I could use it I use it to my advantage sometimes, often,
Right,
but I
right.
have to be careful, right? Because you really, with that power comes responsibility, is what I'm saying. So you really have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, I agree. And Jane, so with the power comes responsibility. And I think you mentioned that in the very beginning, in answering the first question. How do you feel about that? Like that response? And do you want to say a little bit more about what are the key tangibles and what are the intangible metrics of power and influence?
Yeah, absolutely. So, power, power can come to you. I mean, I think a lot of my personal power comes to me. I've been in the industry now for over 30 years, and I have experience and knowledge. So I think that, people expect me to be knowledgeable about things. When they ask me questions, they want answers. And I think you have to be careful. I make it a practice. People that know me know this, that when they ask me a question, I typically say, I need to get back to you because I want to take some time to do a little bit of research. Because often if I say something, it's just a given that that's true. And I have to be careful not to just respond, because whether it's laws change, regulations change, the way we should handle things, I need to take some time to think about it, because if I say something, it's a lot of responsibility. People are going to act upon it.
And that can be a little bit scary. The ramifications of our voice, right? The ramifications of the things that we say.
Similar to what, Denise was saying, that, you have to be careful. Recently, I don't want to be intimidating, and I don't want to be unapproachable, and I want people to feel comfortable coming to ask me questions. But at the same time, I also have to remember that when I give an answer or when I say something, people are going to listen, and so I better be careful before I say something.
And Alexandra, I'm going to jump to you on this now, because now a powerful woman in a male-dominated field, and how do you assess how powerful you are in your professional situation? Because I have a feeling this is going to be a very interesting response.
So I've being in the construction industry for over 25 years, I've learned a lot. I've learned that when I walk into a room, I like to sit and I like to listen to everyone else. And I feel like by sitting and listening, that kind of asserts my power before anything, because everyone's looking at me to say, what is she thinking? What is she doing? And I'm really not thinking you're doing anything. I'm listening to everyone else, and I'm assessing the situation. I'm feeling the room to see, who I'm going to interact with, who, and really feeling out the team and whatever that conversation is. I do agree wholeheartedly with Denise and Jane about I have to be careful. You know, when you're just starting out, you can say to others in the organization, I'm having a bad day. You know, that client really like, you know, and you can make those kinds of things. But when you're in, you know, positions that we're all in, we have to be stoic and we have to table that and put that in the back and take that home and not use it at the office. We always have to be, you know, even keeled and calm with every situation, because everyone's looking at you and looking up to you to see how you're going to react. You know, what is that reaction going to be? And, you know, sometimes the same thing when you answer an email too fast and I give, you know, I'm doing a million things and I send a 3-word response to someone, I have to remember that 3-word response, someone might see that and go, oh, you know, she's upset with me, I did something wrong, when really it's just me, you know, giving a quick response. I'm not, you know, saying, good morning, here's what I think, and that's a great job. I'm just giving a response to help. So you always have to look into yourself and retrospect before you reply, before you know, say you're having a bad day. You know, male, female, you know, you might have a male employee that could have a higher emotional aspect about them than a female employee. When, you know, stereotypically you would think that females would be more emotional than males, but that's really not the case. You really have to customize, like I said before, per employee, and just think about it and remember that any syllable that comes out of your mouth to someone else could be, you know, a very powerful thing, even though you don't mean it to be.
Well, that's, you know, I want to just jump to the first thing you said, where you come in and you sit in silence. There's something powerful about being silent, right? And being silent in the room. And I'm going to say
it's intimidating.
It can be, I didn't want to use those words, Denise, but yes, it can be intimidating. So there is something very powerful, although you are using it to be able to assess the situation, to define how to execute your power and what manner to execute your power. And then the choice of words is very critical. And I'm going to jump into Kim now because of the position and the role that she plays in her current role at JFK Terminal 1. The choice of words is very, very critical, Kim, especially in your role. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And
thanks, Palmina. I think in all roles that the choice of words is critically important. And again, while we are really focused on people that are in positions of authority, when again we think back to our younger selves, or less junior, when we were in less senior roles, I think thinking about what Jane said in terms of the thoughtfulness of responses, and of course, attorneys, we're notoriously very thoughtful, but I think that's important for people to think about, particularly in the age of kind of instant communications. Like, your words do matter. What you write in an email matters. You have to make sure that you're clear. I think people you have to ensure that you continue to have those conversations. Like Denise mentioned, Alexandria mentioned them as well. I think those are so important. And I think working even deeper than your direct reports is so important to understanding issues and thinking about how we respond. And certainly for those of us that work on diversity issues and really are trying to ensure that we have sufficient women-owned businesses as well as minority and other diverse groups on, listening is so important. We have so many constituents. So obviously you have whoever you're reporting to, your CEO. In our case, Palmina, we are working very closely with the client on a day-to-day basis. So our client, we have to be concerned with. And then again, for our diversity work, we have a whole range. And Alexandria, I know you know this as well, for all the work that you've done with Holt and the diversity programs, right? We have our constituents, the public, the business owners. So, what we're articulating to all these different groups needs to be consistent and needs to be honest and accurate. But we can easily hit a landmine, right, if we use the wrong language. So,
right.
that's very important. And again, that's just not for CEOs or senior VPs. That's for project managers. That's everyone. I think that's a lesson that we can all take and heed.
So Kim, with that, that's a really good point. I'm going to jump into my next question, which is how important is it to be an influencer in your organization? I mean, Kim, you've alluded to this a little bit, right? And Alex, you have said the same thing. I mean, each one of you individually have alluded to this, but tell me what you think the depth of value it is within your organization and maybe strategies for achieving that within the organization.
Yeah, I'm really happy to talk more about that. Again, I would start with the premise that one does not automatically become an influencer when they reach a certain executive position, that one can be an influencer at an entry-level position. Now, it's different type of influence, but it's influence nonetheless. For the work that I'm doing with diversity, compliance work, it's critical that I be able to influence people. If I can't influence my client or influence the folks I'm reporting to, then we're in big trouble in terms of our goals. But that's, again, I think one of my colleagues on the panel mentioned, right? So important to understand what are the goals of your organization, making sure people are rowing in the same direction, and using your influence, frankly, to achieve those goals. I mean, that's really, the influence isn't so much about promoting you as the individual, it's promoting what the goals of the organization are. And hopefully when you do that, you will be recognized and you'll be able to move up kind of the chain of command in your organization or be attractive to another organization.
Right.
And that's another thing I think, particularly for women, for some of us, it's staying in an organization for 15 years or 20 years, but for others, it's changing organizations every 3 or 5 years. And for some of us, it's, starting our own businesses and then maybe taking a role in government. So I don't think there's one model that works for everyone, but establishing, your competence, establishing yourself as a trustworthy individual, and an authentic person, I think will bring you success regardless of where you start your career.
Great. Jane, how about yourself? How important is it for you to be an influencer in your organization?
It's very important to me to be an influencer for a variety of reasons. One of them is I do take the mission and the culture of Sitnalta, very seriously. We are a privately held company, and it's very important to this organization. We're not just about the bottom line. We are very concerned with really improving the lives of the people that work here with us and our other stakeholders and in the communities that we work in. So when we talk about the culture here, I feel, especially as the only female senior executive, that it's important for me to influence the people that I work with by being really approachable and by being really helpful and by kind of coming in with a positive attitude. So if I don't come in and set a tone of being friendly, being helpful, or trying to be hopefully succeeding, that's going to trickle down. So if I don't come in and behave in a way that I want other people to behave, I would be very disappointed. So it's important to me in that sense to be an influencer. It's important to me, I like products that come out to look professional. So I always have to stop myself. A lot of times I want to write a very quick email and I have to say, if I just respond sloppy and don't use grammar, it kind of sets a tone that other people are going to do that. So I do feel it's important for me to be an influencer, and it's important that I set a good example.
So you influence by example, right? You influence by actions. You influence by behavior,
I try.
The environment.
I try. It's funny. I try to come in with a positive attitude and grateful for my coworkers. And I really, it's funny. I want to treat my coworkers the way I would have liked to have been treated over the course of my, career.
Yeah. And Jane, that's a very powerful statement, because it is accepting you're creating boundaries to what you would like to accept and creating boundaries for what you are going to expect from others, right? And that is a very powerful action. Denise, how about yourself? I almost can tell the answer before you go in to give it to me, but how important is it to be an influencer in your organization?
I would say it's really important. And I'll give you 2 examples. So when I was actually, I just want to go back, when I was at the Port Authority, I was there for many years. I left as chief of operations, and I guess 10 years back, we were looking at ERGs, and we had only 2 ERGs at the time. And I knew the importance of starting a women's ERG. And I knew I would have I had the influence and I had the power to do it. Did I have the stamina to really push it forward? So I went to the people who I thought I should go to. And I said, I think we need to have a women's ERG. And they, absolutely, Denise, here you go, take it on. So, with that, comes power, right? To make sure that we forge ahead with the women's ERG, working with, and at that time I was working with, they didn't with Mike Messiah, who retired recently, but they didn't really have the ED&I group yet in place. So I helped with that, establish that. So that was great. And that was just, influencing, seeing a need, right? Fast forward to AECOM, AECOM, I'm chief of strategy and innovation. And as people know, people are comfortable in positions where they are, right? AECOM has 2 campaigns that, that's out, ESG, environment, social equity and governance, and also digital campaign, right? So now I have colleagues who are, let's say, who aren't my direct reports, who have whole teams of people. How do you influence them to say, okay, we have these campaigns, we have to embed them in our work, right, to move these forward, especially with, we're tapping into IIJA money. So how do we do that? So that's also influence, because they don't have to listen to me. They could say, hey, we have our work and we have enough of it and we don't want to do that, but they do, because they understand the importance and they understand why we need to do that. So that's influencing or changing a culture, right, to understand the importance it is to the company, which is AECOM, and how do we move forward to grow that? And you talked about growth, Palmina. So it's and I think in some respects it's getting what Kim said, their respect, to understand the importance of it and to work with you. And for some people it would work well, and some people may not, because like I said, they're comfortable doing things the way they've been doing it for the last, I don't know how many years. So change isn't always something that people look forward to doing, but with me,
but a necessity, right?
Necessity. Exactly.
Yeah. And thank you, Denise. And Alex, I'm gonna ask you this question, but with this thought of change and organizations that have been, in fruition for over X number of years, Hold Construction has been a family-owned business for over 100 years. You come in, you define change in a very powerful position. You're a female in just what generically is known as a male-dominated industry, right? You have been at this for 25 years, as you stated earlier. How important is it to be an influencer in your organization?
So it's extremely important to be that for myself and for the organization, especially because my title has corporate initiatives in it. So whenever leadership has a new initiative, it is my job to steer the ship and make sure everybody's following, the new corporate initiative. So that being an influencer is key to making sure that everyone is following that new initiative. I mean, case in point, when we're talking about our supplier diversity program, it's the first of its kind. There's nobody else that has it. And 100-year-old company, telling them, hey, we're going to do this, and this is what we're going to have. It's great that my leadership believes in me and the team and what we come up with, and that they allow us to interact and make sure that these initiatives happen. Some of them come out of what I think, what others think, or what they want. So it's so important to believe in yourself, be an influencer, and make sure that you are that beacon for everyone to follow and go to. Otherwise, whatever initiative you have would fail.
Thank you, Alex. That's very powerful stuff. Thank you. Okay, so ladies, in respect to time, I have a final question. Kind of, it's a combined question and advice. And I want you to carefully think about your response, because this is a very difficult question and we do not have a lot of time to answer it. And I almost want you to automatically give it, because that means it's innate and you know what the response is. So tell me, how do you create a power network for yourself? And Alex, I'm going to ask you first.
So for me, a power network would be different people from different walks of life, different job titles. I feel like a power network, you can learn from people in your power network, your mentors, your proteges, everyone that you think you can learn from, and gather them up and use them as a resource for yourself. But just don't ever stop learning. Learn from everybody.
Excellent. Kim, how about yourself? And you have to unmute.
Great. I love this question. I'm going to think back to my life as a young attorney. That was a long time ago, Denise. And, I think it's important for women in the workplace to think beyond perhaps a comfort zone. Maybe you have the girlfriend that you go out to lunch with every day. Like, think about inviting another colleague to walk with you, to grab a salad or a sandwich. Make sure you can participate in activities that your organization might sponsor, or even think about offering to organize something. They have these various corporate challenges. I know sometimes people are in different remote workplaces, but there's always some charitable work, and you could talk to the leadership in your particular project or organization about having your company participate, really thinking about being a more active participant in your company. So it'll really help influence or help you develop your influence in an organization. Again, I always like to talk about a long time ago when I was I think a first-year lawyer right out of law school, and I tried to join the softball team. And at that time, they weren't letting women join the softball team. So I guess a couple of other women associates heard that I wanted to play softball. So we got together and we had covert meetings with Jane, with the partners, the women partners in our law firm, and devised this whole strategy about having women play softball, so much so that we changed the rules of the lawyers softball league to mandate that they had to have co-ed teams. And why was softball such a big deal? Because like you go to the games, you played, by the way, we won the championship that year, the first year women played. But then afterwards you would go out and have like the mandatory cheeseburgers, which soon changed to like Caesar salad after about 2 years of having more women on the team. But the burgers, the beer with all the corporate partners, right? So, I say, join your team's, softball team if there is one, organize a game, organize a walkathon, organize a charity, do something even beyond the business. But certainly with regard to your business, very important to join as many professional organizations that you can, to help cement your role as an influencer in your organization.
Thank you, Kim. Denise, how do you create a power network for yourself?
Well, I really like what Alex and Kim had to add about the personal organizations. I think it's really important. For me, I have a personal board, and that personal board changes. So, and what do I mean by that? When I graduated, college, and this is for the people early in their career, I had friends, and from school and my new employment. And I created that personal board of people I would look into, not just one mentor, but a few, because different people have, and they would recommend, oh, maybe you should go on this, join ACE or join this group of folks, which was really interesting. And not just join a professional organization, you have to participate in it. Because when you do that, you're working together, you're team building. And I think Alex talked about that. Your team building, your learning. And through that, they'll bring guest speakers in. And it's really important to be there and to listen. And as I moved up in my career, my board changed. The people who I brought into, it grew, it expanded. And I still have that personal board, people that I could reach out to talk to. And I guess that's my power network, Palmina. Those are the people I go to. And over time, it's changed. But as I grew, it's grown too. And when you look at different networking opportunities, or you maybe career changes and things, it's really important to, especially now with LinkedIn, to go out and to introduce yourself, or even at a function, introduce yourself, because all of us are very aware and like to speak to different people. And I believe in that thoroughly, that communication is really important. So for me, it's having that power board, or my personal board of people that I reflect on, and my go-to people.
Thank you, Denise. And Jane, how about yourself?
Yes, these have been fantastic answers. And I think that my answer would probably be a combination of a little bit of each of these answers. But for me, when it comes to my power network, and I think you have to kind of know the question to ask, and then you have to know the people to answer the questions. So I've been very fortunate. I've been involved in some great organizations. I have to give credit to the American Bar Association's Forum on Construction Law, the American College of Construction Lawyers, some of the other associations that are national that I've been involved with. And if I can come up with a question, I can usually find the right person to get the answer from. And for me, being active in these organizations, being friendly and developing these relationships, I'm comfortable that when I reach out to somebody and I have a question, a professional question, a personal professional question, that I know who to ask that question to and who's going to give me a good answer. And I think that's critical. It comes across in both your personal, professional, which are the questions you have, and then also when you need information. I remember when I was at the MTA, it was critical when somebody asked me a question, I needed to know who to go to get that information the quickest. And developing relationships with those people that were going to give me an answer quickly, so that, if we were at an MTA board meeting and somebody sent me an email and saying a question, I could get the answer to that question immediately so they could report to the board. And knowing who to go to get those questions, and knowing that they'd respond to me immediately because I was credible, I'd worked with them, I'd been courteous with them, that's important to me.
Well, ladies, these were all great responses to every single question I asked. I thank you for all of your time. I know these were not easy questions, but I know that the audience appreciates it, and continue being as powerful as you are and as great as you are. And I look forward to our next communications.